大家晚上好，非常欢迎小伙伴们今天来到我们的直播间。然后我们今天是非常开心，有请到了来自新加坡的一个 Swap 项目。然后今天的直播可能会是用英语来讲的。然后大家很多听众朋友们都是受过这个大学4级这个英语普及的，应该是没有什么问题的。所以大家可以练练听力，然后有什么问题的话，可以这个打在屏幕那里，然后打成中文，然后我来传达给嘉宾，然后就可以了。I was, have a chatting with the listeners a little bit.
Got it. Got it.
Okay. 哎，亮子，我们今天会有抽奖吗？
可以抽一点吧。
怎么抽呀？
没有，你就说抽奖，我这边抽就行了。
哦，那什么时候抽啊？
就结束之后呀。
哦 ，OK。就是我们今天的直播的话，还是会有抽奖的环节，在直播最后的时候，由我们亮子同学给大家抽奖。然后还是希望大家可以积极问问题啊。然后因为 Stella 这个项目是 Moonbeam 上最好的一个 swap，然后他们的交易量已经超过了10亿美金，然后也是非常非常好的一个成就。然后大家可以尝试去使用一下，体验是非常好的。然后大家有什么问题可以直接问，这个机会比较好，创始人就在这里。对。然后对。现在已经有小伙伴开始说有营销方面的计划吗？然后我们在最后的时候会开始让创始人一一回答你的问题，然后我会把这个问题加到后边的，就是我们首先会有一些基本的问题问一下嘉宾，然后这样子大家会有一个整体的印象对这个项目，然后再针对于这些问题或者对这个项目基本了解，大家可以再问一些问题。好，现在8点钟了，我们要开始直播了。Hello, Aziz.
Hey, how are you guys doing? Hey, everyone.
Yeah, I'm doing great. And it's been a while since our last invitation interview. Since our PolkaWorld interview, and it was a great interview. And our community members loves your project a lot, and so that's why we invite you here to have a live broadcast. And since the previous PolkaWorld interview, and I think StellaSwap achieved a lot. You've passed the 10 billion trading volume, right? Congratulations! It's a great milestone.
Thank you.
And
thank you. I think it's good to be there.
And first of all, could you brief us about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm just one of the co-founders and contributors to StellaSwap, which is the largest DEX right now on Moonbeam and across the Polka ecosystem. Prior to this, I was in a centralized exchange, one of the first regulated centralized exchanges across the Middle East. And way before that, I was in the financial industry. So yeah, most of my career is spent on the financial side of things. But with DeFi, you have to be the skill set or the repertoire that you need is much more intense and more all-rounded. So glad to be part of this industry and working towards creating value for users.
Great, amazing. And there are a lot of keywords that describe StellaSwap. The top DEX on Moonbeam, one-stop DeFi, hybrid DeFi, and cross-chain swaps. So could you please explain from a user's point of view what actions I can take on StellaSwap that are not possible on other swaps, or that provide a better user experience on StellaSwap?
Got it. Yeah, that's a very good question. So StellaSwap is basically a hybrid DEX. What does it mean to be a hybrid DEX, right? So it means that there are various AMMs or automated market makers within StellaSwap, right? So you have we're a combination of a standard AMM like Uniswap V2, a standard AMM like Curve, and a concentrated liquidity AMM, right? Which is basically like a UniV3 or a lot of the concentrated liquidity models coming up, right? So the reason why we are a hybrid AMM is to ensure that we get the most optimal pricing for assets in a decentralized way. Because if you look at a DEX, right, one of the key weaknesses of a DEX versus a centralized exchange like Binance, is the liquidity depth, right? So because in a DEX, liquidity is inefficient. If you talk about standard AMM, where liquidity is provided across all price ranges, but if you look at like a centralized exchange, the orders, the order book, right? You can see that there's a bell curve, and the liquidity is sort of like concentrated around current market prices, right? And that's why it's very efficient, and you face very low slippage in centralized exchange. So what we wanted to do was actually bring out all the AMMs into one group, so that we route it the most efficient way and users get the best price with the lowest slippage. So that's why we're a hybrid DEX. So that's one of our unique value propositions. Another unique value proposition on us is that we are built on Polkadot, right? Specifically on Moonbeam, which is one of the biggest parachains, which is focused on EVM compatibility on Polkadot, which is substrate based, right? It's a different framework. So the reason why we choose to build on Moonbeam and Polkadot is because we see that as sort of like the future, because they're addressing one core component of blockchain, which is interoperability and scalability, right? So Polkadot is relatively new. The first few parachains like Moonbeam went live like more than a year ago, right? And we're one of the top protocols since then, right? So what the beauty of Polkadot is it allows for secure asset transfers between each parachain. Each parachain can be looked at as a separate independent blockchain, right? So each blockchain can talk to each other and you can transfer assets natively and securely. So that's what you get when you sort of like trade on us. What can you expect as a user? You can expect that whatever assets that you want to find natively on Polkadot and Moonbeam, you can be assured that we have the deepest liquidity and therefore the best prices, the lowest slippage, right? And also you get access to a whole lot of Polkadot native assets from other parachains across Polkadot, right? All in one hub, right? So we make it easy for users to have DeFi at their fingertips, swap, provide liquidity, bridging, XCM, which is basically cross-chain messaging transfers of protocol of Polkadot, and a wide range of like fiat on-ramps, basically a DeFi hub.
And so can I say that in conclusion that means with the StellaSwap, we can swap any tokens that on the Polkadot ecosystem, and including the tokens on Moonbeam, right? And with
yes, exactly.
With very low slippage.
Very low, yes, exactly.
And very happy that you choose the Polkadot. But there's an intriguing phenomenon. There's an intriguing phenomenon in the blockchain industry, where deploying a application on different underlying platforms can result in varying degrees of attractiveness. That doesn't happen in Web2 spaces. In Web2 spaces, if you deploy an app on iOS or deployed on Android, there's no such differences. But in blockchain industry, if you deploy on Polkadot, on Moonbeam, or you deploy on Upstream or other layer 2 infrastructures, the attractiveness is totally different. So how do you think about the implications of this might be for DeFi?
So that has been what you brought up is a case of the nature of blockchains, which are independent from each other, and therefore you create silo economies. So basically, when you're in Ethereum, versus when you're in Moonbeam or BSC, is that each are their own separate ecosystem, and therefore going to another, you face a lot of sort of like limitations, frictions, and risks, right? So that has been that's why one of the core challenges of blockchain is interoperability, the ability for networks to talk to each other in a way which is secure and can facilitate secure messages and asset transfers, and the update of what you call the status, which is the source of truth for each, right? So that's a good question in the sense that that is what is one of the key sort of like points of addressing in terms of blockchain interoperability, and that's why we chose Polkadot, right? Because Polkadot aims to address that, right? This notion of secure interoperability. So in Web3, it could be, and that's why centralized exchanges are very popular, compared to decentralized exchange, because if you're in Binance, you want Ethereum, you want Glimmer, you want Polkadot, everything is there. You don't have to change a network to bridge, to get an asset that you want, or to use them in lending and borrowing protocols or staking. Everything is there at your fingertips, right? It's just clicking and choosing a coin. But on this DeFi, if you want a Glimmer or Polkadot, right, you have to be, obviously the best prices of Glimmer and Polkadot is on Polkadot itself, right? And therefore you have to bridge your funds from Ethereum and come here and trade, right? Though granted that DeFi is decentralized and it's you have full custody of your assets, but it is very inconvenient. You can't expect a new user who doesn't really understand DeFi to suddenly know how to create a wallet, how to transfer assets using bridges, what to do when they come to a new network, how do they interact with DeFi protocols on a new network. So all these are very complex things, right? And that's why the premise of what the vision of Moonbeam, right, is to address that, right, via cross-chain technology, so that all these complexities about changing networks, going from one network to another, is simplified from a user experience, right? So you don't have to do all that. That is all abstracted in the back end. So on the front end, all users need to know is that I just want this coin, right, from this network. It doesn't matter. So that has been that's why we're very big on cross-chain technology. In fact, just a few weeks ago, we launched cross-chain swaps with that was the underlying infrastructure by XLR and Squid, right? So what that allowed is that users from any network, to buy any native assets on Moonbeam and Polkadot, right, via our DEX, right? So suddenly they don't have to do bridging. Suddenly they don't have to have gas fees on the destination chain. Everything is one click, and that streamlines onboarding, right, for users on a new network like Moonbeam. So that's why that is something that we're really proud of. And going forward, you can see much more potential, as in potentially awesome cross-chain applications on Moonbeam.
Yeah, great. I think we are still in the early stage of blockchain, and later we think users still have to care about the underlying infrastructure anymore. They are just using a swap, and they don't have to know that where the swap is deploying, and the interoperability protocols and other tools can help users to achieve that. And how far we are from it, do you think? Because StellaSwap is using the you've mentioned the two projects, right? Cooperating with them. So when do you think you can achieve that? And as a normal user, I can just use StellaSwap to swap any tokens, no matter it is on Ethereum or no matter it is on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that is live already. You can go to StellaSwap.com, where you go to our app, and on our swap page, there is two sections: a normal swap, where you can swap all native assets within Moonbeam and Polkadot, within Moonbeam. And there is also another section for cross-chain swaps, where if you want to get something outside of Moonbeam, like on Ethereum, on Binance Chain, on Polygon, you can do it right here with one click. So that's one very cool thing about cross-chain swaps. It's live.
Cool. And welcome users to go to StellaSwap.com and to have a try. And the hot topics in 2023, one of the hot topics in 2023 is about the Ethereum Shanghai upgrade. It's a great update because the staked Ethereum can be released. So is there anything users can do on StellaSwap?
Yeah, that's a great that's why in preparation of that, right, of that Shanghai update is basically, you can see a resurgence of discussions around liquid staking derivatives, LSDs, right, especially around stake ETH, which is probably one of the biggest sort of like LSDs in DeFi, right? And I think going forward, finally, right? Everyone is watching. This is a huge sort of like barometer across DeFi, because obviously Ethereum is the one that initially sort of set the stage for smart contracts blockchain development. So everyone is excited about what that can transpire, and that's why it's very important as a protocol. Most important, beyond the fact that we facilitate access to optimal prices as a trading venue, I think it's also very equally important for us to create bridges across networks outside of Moonbeam. Because if you create bridges, a very secure bridge between networks, right? Between other L1s, like from Moonbeam to Ethereum and vice versa, Moonbeam to Polygon, vice versa, right? The transfer of the ease and security of transferring assets will allow more value to be sort of like exchange. And this, you can see this in economies, right? In countries, where if a country opens up trade with another country or lots of countries, you can see that the value add or the overall economy will increase, right? It means more value is created, there is more synergy. So that's exactly the same way as how we should view blockchain networks, like a separate country. And the more they are interconnected with other L1s or even L2s, right? The more value can be passed through, created, synergized, and the whole economy goes up, right? And that's what we're trying to do for as a DEX, is to connect to as much L1s, L2s to allow users to bridge in, bridge out effectively, and how users can participate in, for example, the increasing popularity of Ethereum or LSDs on Ethereum, pending the next Shanghai fork is, you can from right now you can buy Ethereum on Ethereum network using a cross-chain feature that is powered by Excellent and Squid. You can just click a button, use your Glimmer, DOT, USDC or USDT, and buy Ethereum or Ethereum-based coins on Ethereum, right? And then obviously get ready there. I think a cool use case going forward is the ability for, with more cross-chain applications going forward, right? You can see, for example, other cool use cases, right? Like the transfers of NFTs, or even in the context of LSDs, right? You can sort of like transfer funds from Polkadot or Moonbeam, and then it is staked on Lido on what do you call it, on Ethereum, right? And then or straight away found in Curve, where there's a stake LSDs pool, right, using a Z feature. So right now we're at the start of this cross-chain technology that opens up a lot of channels between other L1s to help create good value add. But down the line, you can see really cool use cases that really makes DeFi much easier, and that's where we would sort of like get towards the path of mainstream adoption.
Yeah, great. And let's turn our topic to the to the compliance. Regulatory compliance will be one of the eye-catching topic of 2023. Because part of the reason is due to a lot of stuff happens previously. So is for the compliance, it is becoming increasingly clear that it will not be a choice, but a requirement. So what compliance issues StellaSwap faces, and how would you resolve them?
That's a great point, and that's a point that a lot of DeFi protocols don't like to talk about. Obviously, because the fact that you're in DeFi means that you want to get away from the regulate. A lot of stuff of that you see on the regulatory requirements, right? Not because we're doing something illegal or we hate regulations, right? It is because I worked in a centralized exchange before, right? So I know the burden of regulatory compliance, where you have to have separate teams, consist of lawyers and regulators working with regulators, a compliance teams, which costs a lot. And because of the regulatory requirements, anything that you want to do or you want to launch has the proper the processes that you need to go through that can lengthen the sort of like the time to launch of a product, for example, by a lot, right? Like DeFi, you can just come up with something, launch, and not really care about the regulatory requirements, right? Because you're in a decentralized setting. So that is basically one of the pain points of why many people go to DeFi, right? Because we can focus on building, and care less about regulatory requirements, which often is, the red tapes or the bureaucracy really slows us down. A lot of formalities and a lot of capital required to do stuff. Now, but I think going forward, everything that DeFi protocols do must have on the back of their mind the essence of regulations. And what's the essence of regulations, right? Is customer protection. Customer protection. That's the key point, right? And that is good. That is what everyone wants, right? So you can see, like, for example, KYC, AML. Those are the sort of like basic building blocks, which I don't think we're fans of anyways. But I think that is something. DeFi protocols might have to look at in the medium to long term, and obviously, having limitations to operate, for example, not allowing certain users from certain countries or jurisdictions to use your application. I mean, you can see it right now happening. But regulatory enforcement in general is very hard for DeFi protocols, obviously because of the decentralized nature. So it remains to be seen how DeFi can be regulated. The only viable way right now would be the on-ramps where fiat money is converted. I mean, they are basically the custodians in and out of DeFi, right? So those like centralized exchanges, right? So those would be the most viable form of regulatory enforcement. But in DeFi, it really remains to be seen how this could be effectively managed. And on our end, what we actually do is basically just monitor regulatory sort of like advancements so that we are well prepared to sort of like pivot or react whenever need be.
Yeah, great. Because compliance is an issue, but that's also an opportunity. I think compliance is just a way to adapt to the traditional financing system, and it's a way to coexisting. There's always a trade-off. People don't want their name reviewed, and transparency and the decentralization is the nature of a blockchain. But government always want to know who is under all these behaviors. So I think the KYC and I think some protocols is working on that, to have a online credential and also the ZK technology. There's always
privacy.
Yeah, they want to have a trade-off, to keep your privacy and also to keep the transparency of the blockchain. So let's share about your upcoming plans.
Great. Yeah, sure. One of the main things that we're working on right now are three things, right? We're sort of like launching our universal router. Since we're an AMM, we have different AMMs. The most important thing is to automatically route trades the most efficient way across our three AMMs, or even if not more in the future. So our universal router allows users to automatically, whatever they want, right? They use any coin token A, switch to token B. On the back end, our universal router will look at the best prices across the different AMMs and find the best prices, or chop them up into, and then put them in different AMMs. So I mean, ultimately, the most important thing for users to understand is that they will get the best prices. So that is going to launch in the next week or two. So really excited about that. We've been working in that for half a year. That has been quite a complex bit of things that we've done. Other two things is that since we're at the center of the Polkadot sort of like awakening, right? I think it's cool that and as the largest DEX, right? One of the largest DEX across Polkadot. We're at the heart of a cross-chain sort of like utility, and that's why we're one of the most active DEX, right? To list other parachain assets. Like we just recently launched our Fala network. We initially had Interlist IBTC, Akilas AUSD, and we have a lot of our other parachain assets lined up in the next few weeks, which is going to be really, really cool and awesome for users to trade on our DEX. So that is something which is very important, because that shows that with Polkadot's XCM, all these assets from different parachains can be at one venue, right? So with by XCM. So that is something that we're working as a create, right? Narrative of Glamour, which allows users to liquidate whatever state Glamour on validators or collators network, and creating a lot of use cases beyond that, right? To supercharge their DeFi state Glamour positions. So those are the three things that we plan to sort of like focus on in this quarter. And yeah, it's going to be a very busy, on top of what we've launched in last month. We launched Pulsar, the first launch of concentrated liquidity AMM on Polkadot. And yeah, that helped us reach our $1 billion in trading volume, the first DEX to do so, Polkadot. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we're working on. We're actually sprinting, and it's great for us to be at this level of development and innovation, because we get to work with a lot of talented people, talented teams, and awesome parachains, that work together to actualize or to harness value across the Polkadot ecosystem, just as it was intended.
Okay, great. And I will pick up some questions from the audience to see what they're interested in. 我们基本上介绍，就是创始人基本上介绍了一些关于项目的计划呀，还有他们做的一些事情。然后不知道大家有没有这个完全 get 到他讲的这些点？大家关于这个 StellaSwap 还有一些问题的话，可以打在屏幕上，可以问一下。然后 StellaSwap 的话，其实是 Moonbeam 上最大的一个 swap，他们的交易量已经超过了10亿美金。然后他们这个可以 swap 所有平行链的代币，也可以 swap 很多，就是 Moonbeam 上的所有的代币都可以 swap。然后另外的话，他们正在跟好几个桥合作，所以基本上以后你们不用管这个是在哪条链上的代币，基本上用 StellaSwap 都可以直接去完成。然后，所以大家有什么问题可以问一下。哦，有一个one audience is asking that is there any marketing plans?
Is there any, I mean, marketing is something that we've constantly worked on, and we will continue to work on, especially with the help of the ecosystem, not only on the Moonbeam ecosystem, but across the entire Polkadot ecosystem. And that has been an active part of our strategy to get word out, on what we're trying to build, on what has been done, the achievements. So yeah, right now we focus on social media marketing, especially we're very active on Twitter, because that's the most effective sort of marketing strategy. We're not big fans of paid ads at this point of time. We have done some optimizations or testings on that, but that still, requires much more attention to detail, and that's what we're trying to sort of further optimize on. But for now, we're very sort of like content, or we're very sort of like happy with how things are going on the organic marketing side.
Great. And how is your team member? Can you introduce some information about your team members?
Got it. Sounds good. So right now I'm the only one. I'm fully doxed, right? And we have a few of our team members which are partially doxed as well. All of our teams are doxed on the Moonbeam level, obviously, because that's one of the policies, and we're happy to do that. So yeah, as in a majority of our team comes from the same background, from a centralized exchange history, right? And obviously, because we've worked together, we know the skill sets of one another, the expectations, and therefore it's much easier for us to create something like this. And one great thing about working in DeFi is the power of the community as well. Because right now, there's an increasing number of our team members which are from our community itself. They started out giving great ideas, great feedback, being very critical about things, and then obviously slowly we started to onboard them as a team member, and now they're sort of like becoming core members, so that is one thing which I love. And yeah, I think they also prefer to remain anonymous, the community members who turn into sort of like our team members. But on our core members, all the experience have been based on creating value across centralized exchanges and trading systems beforehand. We have one guy, T, is also one of the core members. He's part of the if you guys are going to ETH Denver, you can meet him. We're gonna have a booth on 3rd of March at Moonbeam's booth. So feel free to drop by and meet our team, if you just want to hang out, seek clarity, and just chill.
Okay. And next question is, how many tokens should I staking to get a revenue, and how much I can get for 1 day's revenue?
Got it. That's a financial question that lawyers, potentially our lawyers would not want us to answer, but obviously, that is something that not financial advice whatsoever. I mean, to be very clear, what is important is that the access to opportunity in a decentralized way is what we offer. So whether you want to access to get yields from providing your liquidity, right? And you can check out our farms page. You know, we have a new AMM called Pulsar. So the rewards are much higher there because the more liquidity you concentrate, the more your yields, right? Because the more fees that you earn. So you can see, you can provide liquidity and earn, earn a lot of rewards in terms of trade fees as well as yields. So you can check out the dashboard to see what kind of pools are active, what are the ranges of yields that you can expect.
And due to the exploited accident happens last year, we are so worried about the security of the bridge. So can I trust your protocol for security? And what would you do if I lost my asset on your swap?
That's a hard question. First off, right, Nomad exploit. We are at the heart of it, and it's a very painful experience. And it underlined one thing, right? Security in DeFi is not just about security in DeFi is in totality, is comprehensive. It's not just about, the architecture of the protocol of the security framework, which Nomad had a very good architecture, a trustless, optimistic, as in sort of an architecture which was very secure, right? But what led to the incident was sort of like an operational, sort of like a code exploit, right? So then obviously, I mean, that happened and we had to react, right? So going forward, what happened next is we had to have a bridge, right? And therefore, what StellaSwap did for the entire ecosystem is we spent a lot of time, resources, and capital to sort of like talk to stakeholders and talk to individual bridges, and do analysis, a security analysis. You can check it out right on our Medium, where we did a bridging framework to a security bridging framework where we look at the top bridges and the entire security aspect from the architectural design and logic to the operational stuff to basically the security sort of like fund, as in the financial safety nets. So everything was taken into consideration, and we and with the help of Moonwell's governance, the community rallied around Wormhole, which we sort of like underline as well as one of the sort of like secure bridges, backed by Jump as well. So that has been going on very well, and we're proud to say that we're one of the key stake partners with Wormhole. So any bridge asset is via Wormhole. You can check it out. And of course, in any ecosystem, it's important for us to have a strong dependency on native assets. And that's what we've been trying to do, build the reserves and volume and TBL of native assets. And at the heart of it is working with parachains. And that's why we're really proud to say that we're one of the few DEXs that are working with parachains to list their assets. We have farms with Akela, Interlay, Fala, and a whole lot more going up. In fact, I'm going to give you an offer. I mean, in the next week, there is going to be a launch of a parachain farm, right? We can't reveal who, but more information to be given. But that's going to be a very exciting one. I'm pretty sure you know. So yeah, I think two things: crazy amount of work that we did after Nomad Export to find the next bridge based on the totality of security aspects, which we did for the ecosystem, and secondly, the focus on native assets, which we have been doing and will continue to do.
Okay. Next is the commission fee for swapping on StellaSwap.
Oh, that's a nice one. That's a good. In fact, right? We just launched our Pulsar AMM, a concentrated liquidity AMM, and if you haven't swapped, this is awesome because not only, I mean, if as a liquidity provider, every dollar that you provide liquidity, you earn more, right? Especially if you have more concentrated your liquidity position is. So you're in a much better position to be rewarded as a liquidity provider. But more importantly, right, as a user that is not a liquidity provider, you get the best prices via Pulsar. And what do I mean? So as a user, the most important thing about getting the best price of an asset is is dependent on two things: slippage or price impact, and fees, trading fees. Now, on average, like average AMM standard AMM trading fees is 0.3%. Whatever it is, you have to pay 0.3% for a single swap, right? And then slippage. If the asset that you're trying to swap is a blue chip, then it's much lower slippage. But the pool is low TVL is sorry, it's a high TVL pool, then it's low slippage. But more often than not, in Polkadot, TVLs is very low, right? So your slippage is high. So you have a 0.3% fee, and you have maybe another 0.3% fee. So total is 0.6%, right? So that's your total cost of trading. Now, I'm glad to say that on StellaSwap, after the launch of our Pulsar, we're one of the places which charges the lowest sort of like fee structure, because Pulsar, our concentrated liquidity AMM Pulsar has a variable fee structure which often is much lower than 0.3, ranges between 0 and 1.2 depending on the volatility of the assets. So you have lower fees, and slippage is much lower. Why? Because Pulsar is much more efficient. So $1 million of TVL on standard AMM is equivalent to like 100K or less of TVL on Pulsar to achieve the same slippage. So that's how powerful and how users can benefit from using trading on StellaSwap.
What are the LPs that StellaSwap is supporting? And I think this question you've mentioned in the previous ones, that is the APY could be, how much could the APY reach?
Got it. We have a lot of good assets. On our Pulsar right now, we have 4 assets, all native and all parachain assets. Kelas EUSD, although they packed. You have Stellar Glamour. You have Fala Networks Coin. We're going to list a lot of parachain assets on Pulsar as well, and we're going to transit a lot of assets from farms from our standard AMM. Right now, standard AMM is obviously the biggest. We have a stable pool right now with the largest a stablecoin base pool right now. So you can check. APY is around what 15%. We have all the blue chip farms, right? Like Glimmer USD or Dot Glimmer farms. all Ethereum Glimmer, WBTC Glimmer farms, which all of them are above 3 million in TVL and very good APRs. So you can have a look at our farms and on the standard AMM as well as Pulsar. On our Pulsar, the range of APRs can range between 300 to 600%. So you can see the power of concentrated liquidity, especially if you concentrate your liquidity. So you can have a look at the ranges there.
And with the emerging public chains such as Sui and Layer 2 project Arbitrum and Ziki roll up, they're attracting more attentions. How do you what's your opinion? How do you think about the future of Polkadot?
Got it. That's a good question. L2 solutions on Ethereum is obviously something that has always been highly awaited given the scalability issues on Ethereum. But on Polkadot, I'm glad to say that the throughput is much higher, right? And the aspect of interoperability via XCM is much. It's one of the key tenets of Polkadot, right? And therefore, I think projects. Polkadot has one of the most active developer communities, and it's growing at a good, perhaps exponential pace, right? So I think the value proposition of focusing on interoperability is something that Polkadot is at the top right now, and it doesn't seem to be waning. And that's why we're really bullish on building on Polkadot and Polkadot retaining its moat, right, or unique value proposition. And for us, and Alto is basically another network that we are happy to connect to, and just create more inroads in between other Altos to facilitate greater value transfer across each. Yeah. And basically, focus on cross-chain technology. I think that is something which is also a unique point, that Moonbeam stands out on.
OK， 大家还有没有其他的问题可以问的？然后我刚才是把大家屏幕上留言的几个问题大概给嘉宾读了一下。如果大家还有其他的问题，可以继续打在这个 comment 的地方就可以了。然后，StellaSwap 的话，就是 就是其实他们是做了很多的桥，然后而且用户体验是非常好的，就是大家不用感觉到我在使用一个桥，然后可以一键就可以完成很多的 swap，然后所以大家可以去体验一下，还是非常好的一个 swap。然后大家还有其他问题的话，可以在最后聊一聊，因为创始人是在新加坡，然后这个跟大家见面的话也是比较难得的一个机会。然后我倒是有一个问题可以问一下，就是现在大家可能如果钱多的时候会选择这个，钱少的时候可能会选择去中心化的交易所，但是如果你有比如说非常多的钱的时候，是不太会选择这种去中心化的交易所的，还是会选择放在中心化的交易所里边。然后我想问一下这个创始人对这个问题的看法，就是 I got a question for myself. For if I got a large amount of asset, I don't want to trade on the DEX. I will choose I will choose the centralized exchange such as Binance and the OKX. I won't choose any swaps. So what's your opinions towards this issue?
I mean, I don't fault you either, right? Because the centralized exchange experience is much more efficient and streamlined. You go to Binance, you get thousands of coin offers. You get access to services on futures like staking, lending, borrowing, margin call, margins, and everything, right? So I really don't mean, I mean, as a new user, centralized exchange makes much more sense because it's simple, right? Now, where I draw the line, however, is basically why blockchain and DeFi is created in the first place, right? To empower people, to interact in a way which is more fair, more transparent, and more safer, right? And on all that counts, based on that philosophy or under the unwavering principles of DeFi, right? And that's why we're here to build, right? Because at the end of the day, centralized exchanges are vulnerable to being bankrupt. I mean, most of them are not regulated, right? So any day they could fall and user deposits will be gone, just like what happened to FTX, Celsius. There's no transparency because they're a centralized entity, right? That can't happen in a DeFi protocol because on a DeFi protocol, everything is transparent and everything is non-custodial, right? So if, the ultimate sort of like, it's a trade-off, right? If you want simplicity, obviously centralized exchanges is at the heart of it. But if what you really care about is like true security, and as well as true ownership of your assets, like non-custodial, it's not custodied by any entity, only you, then DeFi is for you.
Okay, great. And thank you so much, Z, for being here today. And it's a great pleasure that I think the community members have learned a lot of your project and hope that they will have a try later after the podcast. And I think that's all for our today's podcast. And welcome to our podcast in the future, because we will hold the podcast regularly on every Thursday. And if you have new progress on project or some new releasement or marketing plans, you can come here back again to share all about it.